Your attention, please. The Nook Inc. Getaway Package charter flight will soon be arriving at the deserted island.
Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Neremik, and welcome to our review of Animal Crossing New Horizons. As of writing, it's the 28th of September 2020, just over 6 months since the game launched, and I think with all of that time, I've come to a pretty good understanding of what just makes this game tick. But to figure that out, we'll need to go back a bit. See, this series has always had a cult following, even back when the game was first released in 2002. Now, Animal Crossing population growing for the GameCube, the gameplay was way more simple than it was now. The villagers had pages and pages of dialogue, you could hunt and fish up bugs for hours and hours, and for what it was a simple game. You'd decorate your house to your heart's content, take part in the yearly events and pay off your loan to Tom Nook, and that's what became the basis for the rest of the series. Then, as the years went by, new things were added. Online play, shopping districts, and new NPCs all eventually led up to New Leaf in 2013 for 3DS. In New Leaf, you were the mayor, and you could put ordinances and decorate the town public works projects to your heart's content, the first for the series. With the release of New Leaf, Animal Crossing became way more popular, and after several and so years of waiting, Nintendo had a lot to live up to with New Horizons. I cannot tell you how happy I was when New Horizons was first announced. Like, at all. I was in bed, it was 11 PM, and I'm pretty sure a few tears and screams of joy were had into my pillow at that time. Of course, it had to have came the leak most of my school friends were on a week-long residential, but that didn't stop me from messaging one of my friends out of sheer excitement asking them to show one of my friends a screenshot of the announcement. Anyway, with all that waiting, E3 2019 came around, the game was delayed, and after seeing the trailer, I had my initial doubts, but in a few hours and a lot of rewatches later, they were gone. New Horizons was going to be the best Animal Crossing game yet. But was it? So, presumably this video is going out sometime either in October or November. This is most likely going to be the longest review of this on the site, so I'm going to ask you now because the amount of effort that's gone into editing this video is huge. If you could just like and subscribe before we get into it, that'd be cool. But, with all that said, let's just see what makes Animal Crossing New Horizons be what it is. Animal Crossing New Horizons starts with you boarding a plane to the Nook Island Deserted Getaway Package, customising your character off the bat, a much welcome change from the past few games, and with that you'll pick one of 4 island layouts and take off. Once you arrive, you'll be greeted by 2 random villagers, Tom Nook and Timmy and Tommy, and here's where you notice the game is a little bit different in the opening. See, in this tutorial, you'll be put into a day where the in-game clock isn't reflective of the actual time. Here's where you'll be introduced to a few new mechanics. You'll be shaking trees for sticks, crafting new items, and picking places where your villagers are going to be setting up their tents before ending the day with a nice and cozy campfire. This is a really good opening for the game. Even looking back on it now, I get that feeling I just can't quite pin down. Of course, this introduces 3 new major mechanics for the game in the first 20 minutes, which is exactly how they should have been. First of all, placing villagers' homes has become one of the most requested features in the series' history. It used to be that they'd build their house around one of the many signs around your town, only to have that change in New Leaf to show literally no indication of where they'd moved whatsoever. Being able to not have a villager reign all over your rare fruit orchard is something I can't give the team enough credit for finally implementing. Then there's the material gathering and crafting. This is one of New Horizons' flagship new mechanics, if you want to call it that. It's quite simple. You'll shake trees, cut down trees, bang and break rocks, and even fish up garbage from the ocean to craft a variety of DIY items. Talking about fishing, look at these spots in the sand. It's a manila clam. These guys can be crafted into bait, which can be used to instantly summon a fish anytime, any place. Talking about fish in the ocean, back from Wildwood you can now once again get messages in bottles. These work a little differently than how they used to, but now you'll get a random letter from a villager and it'll also contain a random DIY recipe as well. These are always worth checking out since it's free knowledge and recipes, and in the event you already have that recipe you can sell it to the Nooklings for a few bells as well. Villagers may also randomly be crafting an item in the houses later on, and it'll also give you the same type of random recipe. Back to DIYs, these now include tools, which we'll get to later, trust me, but it's mainly furniture you'll be making here. Now, there's the problem with the game. You can only get so many crafting materials per day, so once you've hit every surface on your island for some, you can't get any more. Later game this is no big deal, but early game where you'll need a large amount of stuff to craft new buildings, it gets really annoying. Another consequence of this is that you don't have a shop right off the bat. You'll be crafting your tools for a while, the tools break, even the gold ones. Okay, I can leave the tools breaking, I'm on a deserted island. But tell me what reason the completion status do I need to possibly aim for gold tools now? Even back in City Folk, the gold axe was meant to not break when the other tiers would, so why has it been undone here? Anyway, come the end of the first tutorial day, the typical Animal Crossing matching real-time effects comes back into play and the game gets pushed into motion. For the first week or so, you'll be doing various tasks for Nook as each day goes by. These include finding enough bugs and fish to invite ladders to the island in his own little tent, building Nook's cranny, building your first bridge and placing down a few more housing slots for the residents, and here's where the game introduces even more bigger changes to the game. First of all is the sell box outside of Nook's cranny once you build it. This thing is a lifesaver. Say you're in a rush or the shop just might be closed that one time, but you want to make some quick cash. There's a box outside of the shop where you can put any items you want to sell inside to be sold the next day for a 10% reduction of the overall price. Again, this is useful for when you're dropping by and just want to quickly ditch a few items, or as I said before, just chilling out at 3 AM doing some fishing. The money is deposited into your bank of Nook account the following day, and you get a nice little letter telling you just how much you made in that case you forgot. Moving on, the ladder and vaulting pole given to you by Dwellers once he sets up his tent. These allow you to quickly climb layers of your own town and jump over rivers respectively. And I love them. Seriously, the bridges and inclines are cool enough to build later, but the feeling of elegantly swinging over the water is so good. If the next game doesn't have these, there's going to be words, because words can't state just how useful they can be, especially in the early game. Another thing that's introduced here is the Nook phone. This handy little device is what hosts your best friends list, encyclopedia, map and recipe list to name a few. It's much nicer of a way than how it used to present these tabs in older games, so I can't really knock it. But one of the major changes that was made to the game is also here, Nook Miles. These are what you'll use to pay off your first home loan and a reward for you doing a wide range of day-to-day tasks. Water flowers? Have some miles. Break tools? Have some miles. Catch some fish, speak to villagers, or dig up a fossil, or miles, miles, and miles. At the start there's only a set amount of these challenges, however, to make sure that you never run dry, Nook Miles Plus is later introduced, which is essentially much easier versions of the tasks which will infinitely replenish so you never run out. Again, I like this system. It gives you an incentive to do things you wouldn't normally, and get really knee-deep into the game and what it has to offer. I have to say, for the first week of the game, you really won't be running out of things to do. Also introduced here is the Nook Stop, a place where you can access your bank, redeem Nook Miles for a few items per day, and also spend some bells on a random selection of goods each day as well. The main thing you'll be spending your miles on right now though are the Nook Miles tickets. These allow you to visit one of the few islands that are available to collect more materials, fruit, and if it's the right conditions to do so, farm tarantulas for money. It's like an episode of No! If you have an available housing slot open, you can run into random villagers here and invite them to your town, which is sadly what most people use these trips for now, but I have to say, if you're not doing that, especially in the late or early game, it's nice to just go to one of these abandoned islands and just relax. Seriously, if you've had a long day, just come here and chill out for a bit, speak to a villager, shake some trees or catch some animals, and it's all quite calming. Definitely worth those 2,000 miles, I must say. Anyway, at the end of week 1, you'll most likely have seen your neighbours upgrade all their tents to houses, build a campsite where you can invite amiibo villagers or just get random ones, and the game just starts to get ever so slightly boring and... oh. That's right, around the 1 week mark of the game, you'll be treated to a brand new town hall building. This is where Risbol comes into play, and it's when you can do stuff you normally would, change the flag, change the town tune, see your island's rating, you know the drill. Around the same time, if you donate to the museum and buy enough clothes from the Able Sisters, they'll get some pretty nice buildings too. Now, you may be wondering how you're able to buy clothes since the Able Sisters isn't constructed just yet, and that's because on random days through the week, NPCs will spawn in your town centre and try to sell you things. Mabel will sell clothes, Labelle will do hats and accessories, and if you get updated in the spring, Leaf will come by and sell you some flowers and bushes as well. Once the town hall is built, the owly music, which is known from the past games, will come back and replace the music you hear in the prologue. And with that comes one final task from Tom Nook before you're free to go and do whatever you want. See, he really likes KK sliders, so you could, like, spruce up the island for him, get a 3-star rating so he shows up. Please? I forgot to mention this before, but Nintendo changed how town ratings work in this game too, and it's much for the better. It runs much the same way it did before, but the big difference here is the use of stars to rank your progress rather than some vague dialogue. Again, it's a much more welcome change. It allows you to measure just exactly what progress you're on a whole lot more easily, and I can't give enough credit for that. On top of this, you can now build inclines on more than one bridge, and they are way easier to place down than they were in New Leaf, but there's a tad little too to select from for my liking. Again, I'm not sure what it is about this game, but it appears that they took away a lot of customization from past games, even though they could have easily ported it over just as fine. Anyway, with that aside, once you've spent a few days actually getting 3 stars, which is pretty easy, KK will arrive the day after, and the following Saturday, the credits will roll. And that's Animal Crossing New Horizons. What a nice game. What do you mean there's more? Okay, so after KK rocks up, Tom Nook will give you a new map with the Island Designer. Once you've bought all the features from the Nook Stop using your miles, this thing severely changes how you can go around customizing your town. Long gone are the days where you just use the designs to make paths around your town, this app actually does it for you. Sure, there's only a few presets, but trust me when I say that unless you're one of those die-hard customize my town from head to toe players, one of these should work just fine for you. On top of this, we also have the final 2 of the game's major changes, the cliff and waterscaping tools. Seriously, people lost their shit when these were revealed, and rightfully so. Sure, you could always do this if you had a map editor for the older games, but to actually be able to change the layout of your town in-game? That's something else. Don't like where that river cuts through? Fill it in. Need a little bit more land on one of your layers, just build some more and knock it down. On top of this, you can eat fruits, break rocks open so they respawn in a new spot, and you can dig up trees so you can replant them without the need to cut them down. This all allows you to customise your town much more than ever before. Seriously, there's new flowers, you can refurbish most DIY items to look differently, public works projects may be gone, but you can still buy similar things through the Nook Stop. Again, there's a severe decrease in selection, we'll get into this later. You can increase volume on music plays inside and outside, and did I mention you can place almost any item outside? Besides, fences are finally their own item rather than just some public works projects mount, and the way that you place them is just heaven. heavenly. It seriously allows you to be more creative than ever with how your town looks, and I can't give them enough credit for it. On top of this, Nintendo finally added a place where you can go and try out ideas and let your imagination run a bit wild. Just hop on a Dodo Airlines flight to Heart's Island and you can spawn in villages using amiibo cards, place down any furniture you might have catalogued, and ultimately make some really cool looking rooms without having to spend a bell more. Now, for those people who make Animal Crossing content, this place is a dream come true, as you can just slap a green pattern on the wall, throw a villager or a player in front of it, and boom, your content just got 10 times easier to make. Seriously, I know it's a niche market, but it's nice to see something like this in the game for those content creators, even if they might have been unintentional. And, shout out, you should check out the people on screen, they all make really good stuff. I might run out of space, so it might be 2 slides, but go check them out, don't tell them I sent you, and if you're watching this, hi, this just got really awkward. Quality of life improvements are here too. You can now have a handy little tool wheel pop up whenever you press up on the D-pad, which makes cycling through tools a whole lot faster. A lot more items will also be able to stack in this game too, and unlike in New Leaf, they'll order it automatically. On top of that, you've got the vastly increased storage space, which can go up to 40 slots, and with the hidden storage as well as many other mechanics that made it in from Happy Home Designer, this all comes together to make what is undeniably the best Animal Crossing game for decorating yet. And that's only helped by the graphics. New Horizons looks amazing. Seriously, all the other games have their charm, but in terms of looking this good, this one takes the cake. Water looks better than ever, cherry blossoms for a few days in the spring are heavenly, the way things light up at night, the whole package is just eye candy, and I can't get enough of it even a whole half year later. Now, as a consequence of everything looking much better, some things may look slightly different to how you used to, though it's not a huge change. Again, the only impact of this is that they weren't able to port furniture directly over from Pocket Camp, which I know a lot of people have a problem with, but trust me when I say I think this will be added in an update later, which again, we'll get into later down the line. Again, Nintendo did a really good job, and the fact my Switch isn't overheating with graphics with a similar quality to Breath of the Wild is something I'm glad for, especially since the console is so close to my mic most days. The only downside to these graphics is that the game can slow down in areas where there's a lot going on. I mean, at this point it's a 3 for 3 with this year's reviews, and at some point it happened in Shenmue, it happened in Sonic Unleashed, and it happens in here too. Just don't overcrowd around with fish, and you won't be having so many pop-in issues anytime soon. Other graphical improvements that were made here were luminant objects giving off much more of a glow, wind blowing in the trees, rain making the ground more shiny, and I might as well group it here for the sake of it, but it can now thunder and rain shooting stars in game too. Seriously, I know the Switch is known for being the least powerful console this generation, but with graphics like this, it's easy to see that Nintendo knows what they're doing at the very least. Moving on, the audio. This game has a lot of it. Now let's start with the good and get into the problems later on though. First of all, the quality of sound effects that you'd expect for doing day-to-day tasks are all in a much higher quality. Much like the graphics, not being on a 3DS meant that the audio was given much more room to breathe this time around. Sound effects are crisp and nice to listen to. The villager dialogue has been changed for the better, with some words being actively made to appear and what else is a jumbled mesh of words. Every KK song from past games is here too, with the 3 incorrect songs from New Leaf finally being obtainable in-game, those being Animal City, a version of the city theme from City Folk, as well as Driving and Farewell. There's also one more song that I was able to catch too, again let me know if I missed any down below, that being a version of the game's main theme called Welcome Horizons. Other minor changes include remixes of older building themes for the updated versions, a new original track for the Dodo Airlines building, the ability to change the volume of CD and record players, portable radios which will randomly play KK music as if they're tuned into an actual radio station, a selection of tracks from Nook Miles Islands and the prologue. Now let's stop right there and actually talk about the prologue music. It has 7 different variations, with each one building on from the last. Basically it's the same song with a few small changes for the first week of the game. Looking back, the music isn't actually that half bad, and I wouldn't mind the option to swap this into the hourly rotation every so often. The problem stems is that this plays for the entire first week of the game. And while maybe enjoyable gameplay wise, it can get a bit grating. It's like the battle music from Sonic Unleashed. Some people will tolerate it and other people won't. It is a problem I have to bring up here since I know a lot of people are mentioning it. But in terms of the actual music, it's alright. Again, there's enough changes to where you may not get sick, but you may will. It's kind of a very difficult subject to touch on, but we'll carry on nonetheless. And that brings us on to the AOE music, which is what some might argue to be the cornerstone of any AC game's soundtrack. Now, just like in the last reviews, I'm going to go through each track and give my thoughts before giving a general conclusion. So without further ado, 12 AM or midnight, it lives up to what it should be, nice and relaxed, and the guitar and synth along with the percussion makes what is quite a nice track. 1 AM. It's okay, I would have expected a track with a slower tempo and a little less going on for this time slot, but it still works just fine. 2 AM. What hasn't been said about 2 AM by anyone yet? I'll use one of the nicest early morning soundtracks in the whole series, and considering that the piano is quite a rare instrument in these themes, hearing it here makes it all the more special. 3 AM. Every Animal Crossing game has a 3 AM track which is just bizarre, almost as if to say, why are you up at 3 AM to the player in a pretty silly and joking way. It's meant to be strange, and it succeeds pretty well. 4 AM. Probably one of the tracks I like the least. It feels like a mashup of ideas from themes we've just heard, and while that can be okay in small parts, I like the original tracks just a lot more. 5am perfectly nails the feeling of 5am to a T. The piano makes a return, but in a much different way than before. 6am, a really, really good 6am track. I could jam to this easily, probably one of the best tracks in the game. 7am, following on from 6am, the music just keeps getting better with every hour. It really gives a feeling of everyone just starting to get up and rush around, and I'm all here for it. 8am. Okay, on one hand, 8am is a track I like, it's just the synth that cuts in every so often from this point onwards that starts to grate on me. Nice song though. 9am. Is this a new hour? I can swear I just heard the exact same melody last hour with a few changes. This one barely scrapes by with an okay rating. 10am. I like the fact they changed up the instruments with a trumpet here, but it feels just too slow for a 10am track. It's an okay piece of music, don't get me wrong, but it definitely shouldn't be 10am music. 11am. I know I said 10am was a bit too fast, and while 11am is definitely a much similar speed, I think it works better here since it feels like everyone is just starting to slow down and get ready for lunch. At this point, I swear, it's like it became a must-have to include part of the main theme in each of these tracks, and trust me, we'll get back to this when we move further on. 12pm. I love 12pm. It fits the feeling of a somewhat developed Island Paradise perfectly, and the fact it's 100% unique with no references to other tracks is absolutely amazing. Easily one of my favourite themes. 1pm. It's midday and yet this sounds like a 4am track. Don't get me wrong, it's not too good, but it's not too bad either, it should just be moved. 2pm. It's slightly better than 1pm, but that synth leading the melody has got to go. I'm not sure about anyone else, but it grates on me really hard for what should be a really good track if it was replaced. 3pm. I don't hate it, I don't love it, it lies directly in the average range. 4pm. Quite a nice track which has a different feel to a lot of the other ones. I really love each section of this track and it's 100% in my top 5. 5pm. Best track in the game, hands down. What hasn't been said about this already? The funk, the complete change around the instruments, all fit the time slot superbly, and it's overall a bop. 6pm. There's an accordion part of the song which sounds eerily similar to some city folk tracks, which I love, and overall it's a nice homage to the prologue music. I actually really like it. 7pm. What starts off as a pretty underwhelming track we've already seen before, later becomes its own thing the longer it plays. Not top or bottom tier by any means, it's just okay. Just please stop using that same leitmotif from the main theme. It's been at least in 4 tracks at this point, please stop. 8pm. Why is the fucking leitmotif here again? The song is okay, but does that really have to be here? 9pm. Nice and calm. I could chill to this. 10pm. Easily one of the best themes in the game. Nails that feeling of the night just getting started while still having a decent amount of energy too. 11pm. Like most 11pm themes, it's pretty chilled out. They experiment a little bit with the guitar here and there, and it would be a good track if not for the... So what do I think of the Owly music? It's pretty obvious, a lot of it is ruined by A, that damn opening theme being crammed into so many tracks, and B, the lack of overall instrumental variety. Seriously, most tracks have a synth, drums, and a guitar, and if you're lucky you might get a piano and cello every now and then too. There's the odd song which sounds out of place for the time it plays, but overall I like the Owly music despite the problems I have with it. Sure, that recurring melody can go fuck itself, but none of the music is inherently bad. Does it live up to the Animal Crossing standard? I don't know. New Leaf had a lot more creative and unique sounding tracks in the game, and some of the tracks, especially 8 and 9am, sound far too similar. But besides my complaints, the audio of New Horizons is still good. Best in the series? Nah, but listenable? Yeah. So let's bring it back around. The graphics and audio at least improved the experience of what should be the best Animal Crossing game yet. Sure, I'm 2 weeks in and running out of stuff to do rapidly, but why should I play this game just by myself? Now, you see, after the 3DS, Nintendo said they were going to make you pay for your ability to play games online starting with the Switch, and I can go on and on about how Nintendo Switch Online is way far from perfect, but that's for another day, and for £20 a year you can't really complain. All we're here to discuss today is the online portion of New Horizons and what it offers. So, what's new? First of all, you'll be able to visit your fellow Switch Online owning friends from the Dodo Airlines airport, and you'll be greeted with a nice little incoming plane message and a nice flyover of whoever's town you'll be visiting. Introduced in this game is also the ability to use Dodo codes. These let you have people over that you haven't necessarily had friended on the Switch with just a simple short digit code, and for when you want anyone over, that being anyone or just your best friends, it works nicely. And as for opening your gates, it's simple enough. The problem comes is when you try to visit someone, or someone comes to try to visit you. Now, having 8-player online is a massive step forward for the series in the social aspect, don't get me wrong. The problem is that it's far too easy to misclick the chat window with Orville. See, he speaks a lot, so naturally, if you're in a hurry, you'll be spamming through the text and will occasionally misclick, causing you, for some reason, have to redo the entire section of dialogue. I know it's a pet peeve, but could they seriously have not given you the option to say, "Ooh, I messed up, can I go back one?" or just trim down the parts which don't really need to be said every time? Anyway, the B part of this problem is that the time it takes for you to connect to someone's island is dreadful. Sure, the island flyover is nice the first few times, and the board is pleasing enough to look at, but when it takes at least on average 2 minutes to arrive somewhere from initially talking to Orville at the counter, when 7 people coming to visit, it's a bit much. Seriously, you're telling me the connection times can't be cut down just a little? This is made worse by the fact that other people can't set off to that island while someone else is already connecting. Could there not be a queue to join so I don't have to keep mashing retry and I can go get a Pepsi or something? At least then, if it's going to take 50 minutes for everyone to join and you can't even play the game while they're joining, we can at least go do something else in the meantime. And besides that, the actual experience of playing online is good. There's obviously going to be lag and random disconnects occasionally, and there's allegedly an autosave feature here in the event that happens, but in terms of being playable, it's as good as far as the Nintendo Switch is concerned. Online you can do what you'd expect too: fish, catch bugs, look at what's for sale, sell your turnips and grab fruit to your heart's content, but most of the fun you'll be having is things you've made by yourselves, playing hide and seek or an improvised match of sumo, and I have to say, that's actually the biggest step back this game has, because it lacks something similar to Tortimer Island. Seriously, these mini-games are great in New Leaf, and it would have been perfect for playing online with strangers on Switch. I really hope it gets added in a later update, because it's such a missed opportunity for them. So, in short, the online works pretty well when you've all arrived, the back end is a shit show though. Although with online there is also one feature I forgot to mention. Though technically that was that you can send your friends letters and gifts, but we're scratching that one, there's also the Nintendo Switch Online app. This handy little bit of software is meant to be getting an update sometime soon, but as of September 20, here's what Nooklink can do. Included features as of right now include the ability to view your in-game passport, see your best friends list, and if they're online, and you can even message them in the event they are. You can scan QR codes and designs, either using the camera or your saved images, but most importantly you've always the ability to type out messages that can be sent in-game on your phone. Now, I know that sounds like an anticlimax, but while the on-screen keyboard for the game is okay, especially in handheld mode where you can just do a touchscreen, the ability to type out messages on a keyboard I'm much more familiar with, and the much more faster than I can on the Switch, is something I can't praise the developers enough for. Now, the only thing I can class here is that if you had a Pocket Camp account, you can link it with your Nintendo account and get some codes to unlock some cool OK Motors and other Pocket Camp themed items. Again, the idea on items is cool, but please Nintendo, just give us the Pocket Camp furniture already, it looks so good! Okay, I'm adding this in after I finish the review, but Nooklink actually ended up getting that update. It wasn't anything too big, but it did allow you to actually use emotes in-game from your phone as well. There's also a nice little animation for when it's a villager's birthday, but it wasn't anything substantial. So now we've covered everything complementing the core gameplay, let's look at what else there is to do. First of all, randomly you'll get a visit from either CJ, Flick, Wisp, Daisy, May, Gorva and Sahara on certain or random days of the week. And CJ is by far the best of these wandering NPCs, if you will. He'll initially give you a sea sports task which you have to complete when you first meet him, and you have to catch a certain size of fish in a row without losing any off the hook. It's actually quite fun and highly worth a try if you see him around. And after that he'll let you sell any fish you actually pick up that day for a 50% increase of what you get at Nooks. And up next is Flick. Much like CJ, you're able to sell him your bugs for a 50% increase of what you get normally. The only difference here is you don't need to do a challenge beforehand. Instead, the other thing Flick offers is to, and I cannot believe this made it in, is to perform a taxidermy on a fish or bug if you catch enough of them. I have no words. This is there, I guess, and it's definitely a feature for sure. I just don't know what to say to that. And then the Sahara, and much in the same fashion as previously, they'll sell you a mystery wallpaper, flooring, or rug whenever they appear. And if you get enough tickets from her, you're leaving that one for free. How nice! Most commonly, Gorva will show up on the beach, and in version 1.0 of the game, he's always a sailor who has been thrown overboard and you gotta find the missing parts of his phone to help him get back home. This means you'll be digging up in the same spots you would normally from vanilla clams to find all the parts and then give them to him. Easy enough. And you get a nice little pirate or sailor themed item in the post the next day, so you can't really complain. The only one of these when you actually know they're going to appear though is Daisy May, who will appear from 6 AM to 12 PM on Sundays. Just like Joan from the past game, she'll sell you turnips at a certain price, which you can then buy and ideally sell by some Nooklings to make some crazy profits. The only downside is that you need to wake up early on a Sunday to actually catch them, but the few times that she ended up trending on Twitter in the UK or anything to go by, I think people were more than willing. Finally, there's Wisp. When you speak to him, he'll get spooked and he'll split up into small pieces which you'll have to round up with your net and then deliver back to him before the end of the day. And if you manage to actually do that, you'll get a nice little reward in the post the next day like you do with Gulliver. Now obviously you can have multiple of these guys on one day too, but you're obviously unlikely to get certain mashups like CJ or Flick on the same day, but hey, all of these guys actually give you something to do on random days, so you can't go around complaining. On the topic of CJ and Flick, every so often you'll be treated to either a fishing tourney or bug-off run by these two. Replacing the way of how these tourneys used to be handled, New Horizons instead has you catching as many bugs and fish as you can within a set time limit. Now this can be a little frustrating, as while the event lasts the whole day, you only have 3 minutes for each attempt, so you have to make every single second count, and when you're down on your luck or don't know where the bugs are going to spawn for that one time, good luck. However, like I said, this only applies to the bug tourney, which I argue is probably the worst of the two. As I mentioned before, you can actually dig up manila crabs to craft bait for fish in this game, and this will easily make the fishing tourney much more enjoyable. Sure, you don't have to look for as much fish if you actually have enough bait, I don't think you need to look for any at all, but there's still a lot of skill in being able to reel in every single fish and getting them to take notice of your bobber on the first try. I have to say, while I was never too big of a fan of these events in past games, I have to say I probably enjoyed this game's fishing tourney way more than the ones in past games. As for the bug off, I honestly would have liked it to be a bit more different to the fishing tourney, maybe like a bug bingo type of deal, maybe learn from Pocket Camp and try and reach an overall length milestone with all the bugs you catch that day. Again, it's not bad by any means, but if I had to pick one or the other, the fishing tourney would win any day. The problem here is that instead of happening once per month like in older games, some high IQ 189 level individual decided to make these happen once per season, meaning that what could be a really nice event every so often with some decent prizes only happens 4 times per year. Again, it's only a reduction of 8 times per year, and I can understand it's to make them feel more special when they do happen, but it honestly sucks that they have to happen so rarely. When you add everything I've just talked about together, you've got quite the good game, which should last people a few months, and okay, so the game is pretty empty in things to do compared to New Leaf, but Nintendo said there'd be updates for 2 years after launch, so surely we're going to get what's missing in these updates, right? Well, the original plan was that the updates would release around when the yearly events were to occur, to stop people from spoiling them and give people who burnt out a reason to come back. Fair enough. The problem is that from the offset it was obvious that these updates were adding more than some new content and some holiday themed items. They were adding old content and trying to pass it off as new content along with everything else. As of September 31st, 2020, here is a rundown of every major content update that has been added to the game. Update 1, March 20th. This update is what introduced the Bunny Day event into the game. Starting on April 1st, literally everywhere on your island will be covered with eggs. Cut some wood, catch a fish, shoot down a balloon, and you get eggs based on whatever you did to get them. Zip would also show up on the first and last day of this event, and you get at least one new Easter themed DIY for messages and bottles per day, though you could get some more by shooting down balloons. You could then use the previously mentioned eggs that you found to craft some pretty neat items, and if you crafted them all, you would even get a special zipper themed item at the end of the event as well. The problem is that these eggs were initially everywhere, to the point where in a small patch Nintendo actually had to nerf their spawn rate as it was annoying that many people. Seriously, if you went fishing it was a damn minefield even after the patch. Overall the event was okay. There was an incentive to craft all the items, and the art looks nice enough, and I think if it was tweaked a little bit it wouldn't have had as much of a bad taste in people's mouths. Now when you downloaded this update you also got a free Nintendo Switch item in the post, or even an ACNH themed one if you were playing on one. So update 1, not meant to be that big, and overall, not that bad. Update 2, April 23rd. Update 2 is arguably the best update we've had so far. In this update, Leaf was introduced, who can sell you bushes and flowers whenever he decides to show up in your town centre with his little car. The museum got an upgrade in the form of the art exhibition, and of course this meant Red and his treasure troll were added into the game as well. They function in much the same way as they did in past games, lending a little bit more to a blend between City Folk and New Leaf for Red. Randomly it'll show up on a hidden beach at the back of your island and allow you to buy one painting or piece of art per player, as well as any other miscellaneous items he decides to stock that day as well. Initially his spawn rate was absolutely fucked, to the point where I went a whole month without seeing him at one point, but it was later fixed in a patch, and ever since he spawned about as much as you'd expect. There was also a number of events too, the first being Nature Day, which started the day of the update. Here you'd get Nugmouse plush challenges related to nature and whatnot, and doing these would reward you with a hedge DIY fence and a decent amount more Nugmiles than you'd usually get, and overall it was a really good event for what it was. Then there was May Day, which had you solving a nice little maze puzzle on an island and being rewarded with a briefcase from the one and only Rover. This only took about 10 minutes tops and it was available for more than one day, but it was nice to see Nintendo try their hand at a different type of event than usual here. Then there's the last two, which arguably weren't all that good. International Museum Day had you run around the museum and collect stamps for some pretty unimpressive rewards at the end of the day, and what's worse is this ran for 13 days, where the reward each day was exactly the same, of all things, and it just wasn't all that good. And then there was wedding season, which ran from June 1st to the 30th, the entire month. This had you treated to a nice little remix of the retail music from New Leaf as you went to Half's Island and decorated his cabins for the wedding reception. Sure, the items looked nice, but this event literally lasted 5 minutes each day with no incentive to do it again. Again, it ran for a whole month, and Nintendo thought that it was completely okay to give us this one thing for the whole 4 weeks. Why? If anything, this is a really missed opportunity, as this is actually pretty similar to what the Happy Room Academy minigame from Pocket Camp is, and I bet if this was included instead of this, I'd still be playing it on and off to this day. For those of you unaware, the mode in question has you craft the furniture a certain villager wants, and then you have to decorate their room with said furniture for your work to then be graded, and you'll get the occasional prize for it too. This should have replaced this event. All the systems besides the rating part are in place here, and I can guarantee you that this would improve the game massively rather than just having this idea be a one-off time thing for the month of June. In fact, why not go a step further and just link it with Pocket Camp? Every few updates add some new furniture in from over there and use it in what would have been a really awesome feature. But at the end of the day, I just guess it wasn't meant to be, which is a shame because with this game's crafting system, I could have really seen it being something special. Update 3, July 3rd, also known as Summer Update 1. Okay, so the last two updates were both okay. At the very least, they had a few problems I can ramble about, but nothing offensive. But again, with the wait for this update being much longer than the last one, essentially being a month and a half, and with the wedding season event not really offering much for the whole month of June, people were expecting great things from this one. So that's when we were told this update would be split into 2 smaller updates. Could this be to spread out content? Maybe. Was it actually because they hadn't finished developing the other half? Probably. Anyway, this update was small. At least update 1, the game was still relatively new, so its single event could be forgiven. However, here is where some cracks in Nintendo's update plan started to show, with that being the main feature of this update, deep sea diving. This should have been in the game at all. Yeah, at this point you could tell that some of these, if not all of the updates, were essentially going to be adding either withheld or missing content from the base game. I'll discuss why that is later, but needless to say a lot of people weren't happy with this update because it didn't feel like an update. Sure, holding back swimming for summer I can get behind, the only problem is that once you've caught the measly selection of newly introduced sea creatures, besides messing around and online with your friends, what does this actually add to the day-to-day enjoyment of the game? I mean, these guys don't even sell for that much. I mean, I could in theory spend a while in the water catching things to sell, however the prices of these guys is so low it genuinely bogs the question as to why they were added in the first place. At least in New Leaf I could AFK in the water for more public works projects. In fact, I was so annoyed I stole this image from Nintendo's replies, tweeted it out, and a lot of people agreed with me. A lot of people didn't agree with me, those replies were very vicious. The day this update was announced, I genuinely think public consensus on this game changed from being mostly positive to ever so slightly bitter at what was going on with these updates. Of course, some people disagree, and let me tell you, those quote retweets and replies could be vicious at times. But pushing that part aside, what else was added? Well, first of all, Pascal will make an appearance if you ended up catching a scalp once per day, and he'll give you a DIY recipe for the new mermaid set and pearls which we needed to craft them once per day. KK was also changed to appear in the plaza on Sundays in the event there was an event on Saturday, which meant he couldn't be there, and a new variant of the Gulliver interaction was introduced with Gulliver. He'll give you pirate-themed DIYs and a bit of new dialogue for essentially the same task as before. Update 4, July 30th, also known as Summer Update Part 2. Okay, so credit where it's due, this one actually came out shortly after Wave 1 to make up for the lack of content in it. This, compared to the last update, was a massive improvement, so here's what's new. You can finally back up your island, given you have Switch Online. The Summer Fireworks Show finally makes a return, with Red appearing in the raffle on every Sunday night in August with his quaint little raffle stand. Here's where you can buy tickets to get a range of balloon and firework themed items from him, which can all be used with some nice effects. However, the biggest introduction here was the return of the Dream Suite. Simply sleep in any bed, accept the prompt to dream, which may or may not get annoying if you just want to roll in and out of bed all day, and be transported to Luna's dreaming hub thing. Here you can put your own island up for other people to visit, given they have the code, or visit other people's islands too. When at someone else's island, you also get whatever designs they may have from this little touchscreen board thing, which sadly did replace Wendell in this game. But visiting other people is easy enough. Again, you just need the code. The problem is that this is a step back from how this all was handled in New Leaf. Is it still a good mechanic? Yes, but what happens to my 3,000 bells for updating my dream once per day, and why can't I just choose to visit a completely random island? That was most of the fun in New Leaf. Of course, this opens the floodgates for a lot more to do in game, especially since now you can check out someone else's island without the constant loading screens, and I can't really complain here. I just hope they add some more functionality to this in the future. And lastly, the one bit of functionality they did add was the ability to report people's islands. Now, I'm not saying there was a toxic group of people that went around and flagged islands that were better than theirs, or the fact that they looked modded, but that totally was for a short period of time. And finally, we arrive at Update 5, September 30th. This is the most recent update, but what did it add? Well, on the topic of the last update, you can now see a list of dreams you previously visited, which is good. Now, this is very much an October update. After October, you're not going to be able to buy, use, or even have a reason for most of this stuff, so here's hoping a November update. But the 2-month wait between this update and the last one was a bit much. Anyway, starting October 1st, you can buy candy at the Nook Stop in preparation for Halloween, buy and wear a variety of new spooky cosmetics, learn 2 new emotions, those being Haunt and Scare, and of course most notably of all, buy pumpkin stems and grow pumpkins in the game. Now that's huge. The fact that you can now plant and harvest food in the Animal Crossing is something people wanted for a while. Personally, I'm slightly worried the game might start making this a more core feature, which would be a little too close to Stardew Valley for my liking, but as of right now, pumpkins just seem to be this one-off thing. Of course, there's also a selection of seasonal DIYs which use these pumpkins, and on quite a strange note, Nintendo said they'd update Nook Link with this update too, but we'll skip that one for now. Of course, the main event here is Halloween, for which Jack returns from previous games. On the 31st, between 5 PM and midnight, your villagers gather in a nicely decorated plaza along with Jack. Here you can trick-or-treat with your villagers in exchange for lollipops and DIY recipes, and of course, as in games past, you can also give said candies and lollipops to the Star of Halloween in exchange for exclusive Halloween-themed items. If you ever run low on candy, you should also put on a costume and visit any villager that decided to stay in for the night for another free candy. Overall, the update is okay. It's very similar to Update 1 in the sense it's mainly focused around one big seasonal event, and I have to say I actually like it despite its minimalist amount of content. Again, an incentive to actually craft the seasonal items is something I'm always glad to see, since I don't usually craft all that much in-game. But with that wraps all the updates so far for New Horizons. New Horizons has a content problem whether you want to admit it or not. There is much less content than ever its predecessor. Many people initially thought the update system was to spread out new content to keep people interested. However, as time went on, it's obvious a lot of the content that we've actually been getting hasn't been new stuff. The game was delayed way back at E3 2019, but looking at the game's current state, at around 1 month, 2 months in, you'll run out of things to do. Your house is far too easy to pay off, and with a lack of any long-term goals such as funding new buildings like New Leaf did, you really don't have a lot to work for. Tell me, I've paid off my house, so what else am I going to be spending my 1.3 million bells on other than the odd item? The only people this game is going to keep entertained for a longer period of time are those people that will spend months and months constantly decorating and redesigning and renovating their items time and time again. And even they got the short end of the stick. There's a noticeable lack of furniture sets from past games. The crafting system rarely gets used unless it's for tools because there's little to nothing to craft that actually looks good, and God forbid you try to speak to a villager. Seriously, in a game where you're meant to have this little sense of community, the community feels like a tape recorder stapled to a shitty piece of cardboard. They have no personality, and if they do, they've all been heavily watered down from past games. Even then, there's so little lines of dialogue, it's laughable to think a DS game put this part of the game down better than the fully priced modern game. Seriously, how many times have you heard the same line about food with just 1 or 2 words changed around? It was a slight problem in New Leaf and City Folk for sure, but here someone must be having a laugh, right? I don't know how many times I've heard Isabel mention what was on TV for last night for crying out loud, and before any of you try and bring up the fact that maybe I'm just burnt out, trust me, I've had this rodeo before. As of right now, I have just over 135 hours on the game. Even moving on from that, ordinances, arguably one of the biggest and best features of New Leaf, is just completely missing. No longer can you have shops open and close earlier, which would be very useful for people that have a slightly different sleeping schedule to the rest of us, and you can no longer sell items up. I'm not sure how beautiful town would fit in, but the fact that they're missing, especially for the night owl and early bird ordinances, are really annoying, because they were literally quality of life improvements, so the fact they're missing just makes it all the more confusing to me. More stuff is missing too. It'll no doubt be added in future updates after I finish writing this. Even then, aren't updates meant to add new content, not stuff from past games which just wasn't ready at launch? Where's the roost? Why does the shop only have one upgrade for crying out loud? An observatory would definitely be nice considering the game literally has shooting stars and a Celeste character model in the game already. Why are there so little options for bridges and inclines? Like, did Katrina and Gracie just die in the 7-year wait for this game? And for the love of God, where is my guy Lyle? I really wanted to love New Horizons, but it is obvious it wasn't finished. Many people are starting to drop the game already, and Nintendo really needs to pick up the ball with these next few updates if they want to keep their sales consistent for the next year and a half. Again, the global pandemic can definitely take away some of the fault on Nintendo's end, but now most developers are back at full steam while working from home. They can't keep slipping by for much longer. But why did we let them get away with it? Well, it goes back to what I think was a smart, if underhanded and possibly accidental thing done by Nintendo at launch. See, reviewers got their hands on the game about 2 to 3 weeks before launch, all is good. And if you don't believe me, here's a Reddit post from March 6th basically confirming that, a total of 12 days before the EU version was even leaked online. Anyway, with that, the problem is the time that the people that were meant to review the game were actually given, and I think that led to an influx of stores I don't think are justified. As I mentioned before, the first 2 weeks of the game are meticulously laid out with new tasks to do and new things to discover every single day. And with the amount of time that the people reviewing would have actually had to play the game, considering it would have taken a while to actually get the reviews ready before launch and editing and whatnot, and what you have is people which most likely unknowingly only saw the part of the game which was truly finished. Once you invite KK and get your landscaping tools, the amount of things to do starts to drop rapidly, so much to the point I'd say that if this game didn't have the bunny events so soon after launch, that complaints of the lack of content would have been coming in as early as late April. I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but with the way Nintendo handed the review copies of this game to my knowledge, it was impossible for the people reviewing it to know just how little content there was beyond the week 2 and things they actually got to experience. Of course, those reviews aren't as prominent now as they were at launch, but looking back on them now, I don't think the people writing them at the time just knew how much content had actually been scrapped. And because of that, I think a lot of people were misled, not so much by reviewers, but by Nintendo in the handling of not really giving people enough time to see what the game was actually about, were misled into thinking this was a game full of content, when actually it runs out about a month into it. Now we're near the end of this review, I've got to talk about this. The one Switch, one island restriction put on this game. The best parts of New Horizons slowly come in building up your island paradise. However, despite the fact that you can have 8 people on one island, only one person could be the so-called island representative. This was an issue in New Leaf 2 where only one person could be the mayor, but even then you could buy your own copy for relatively cheap and have all the control you want. Here it's one island per Switch, so I sure hope you were planning on buying a Switch for every person in your house who wants to play this game. You see, the island representative is the only person who can build new structures and actually develop the island. That means that in the event they stop playing, you're essentially out of luck in terms of building any new structures unless you go and play on their own profile. Why couldn't they have just made everyone have equal power in the game? It genuinely makes no sense why one person gets all the power and the other 7 are essentially left playing Wild World Island Edition. Tell me why I can't just buy multiple copies of the game and use those for my family members who want to play rather than the option which costs almost 5 times as more, that being a whole new Switch? You were able to store save data on 3DS cartridges 9 years ago, what's stopping you from doing that now? It makes no sense, and Nintendo have given absolutely no reasoning as to why this is, and it sucks. Seriously, you either get on the game first and get that role, or you have nothing. It doesn't feel like you're actually in control of the game, so you might as well go and buy your own Switch, because playing on someone else's island as a second character, especially from footage I've seen, and from actually trying it myself, it's just really, really boring. Okay, so obviously I have my gripes with this game, but what would I improve? Well, besides the obvious one I just mentioned, people need much more stuff to do on the daily, and I think adding more buildings and things to work towards is a great step in the right direction. Give me a reason to save up millions of bells on the turnip market. Let me fund new building projects like it did with Nook's Cranny, maybe add a separate area for these shops using Dodo Airlines or something. We did it in New Leaf and Happy Home Designers, so why not have us slowly build a shopping district somewhere else again? Obviously we need a lot more furniture too, and having villagers give us tasks more often would be pretty nice too. There just seems to be a conflict of interest in what Nintendo seemingly is prioritising right now. Sure, the game is great for people who are super into customization, but for the people who just want to live day to day and do whatever stuff is on offer that day without customizing the hell out of their island, there's a lot to be desired. There's also 2 really strange changes that the team made which I really wouldn't mind being undone. The first of all, pitfalls are now reduced to a crafting recipe and are not available from the start of the game until you get it. I understand you really wanted to appeal to the My Town is Perfect crowd, but Nintendo, what about the rest of us who just wanted to dig up a few pitfalls and have some fun? And then, for whatever reason, villagers now can't move out unless you give them express permission to do so. And if it wasn't screamingly obvious, I seriously dislike the fact that it's like this. Way back in City Folk, they'd actually ask for your opinion, but sometimes they'd still move away, and that's ultimately what kept your town evolving and changing over time. In New Eve, they could still move away randomly, but Nintendo made a change so that if they actually asked you if they wanted to leave and you said no, they wouldn't be able to leave at that time. And now they took it a step further so they don't even leave randomly? Why? It literally takes one of the two risks of the time travelling and throws it out the window, first of all. And second, now when people have a town full of all the villagers they want, they're not going to go and get any more 9 times out of 10. It's a small change, but it really ruins what used to be a really interesting portion of the game. Because I can guarantee you, once you've got all the villagers you want, are you just going to say to one of them, yeah, you can leave? I don't think so, and honestly, I know people will have very different opinions about this, but at least to me, the fact villagers can't move out randomly, or, won't make up their minds, it just doesn't make them feel real. Okay, in fact, you know what? Screw it. We're going off script here. Here's everything wrong with how villagers, if you can even call them that anymore, are made to act in this game. First of all, there is absolutely no dialogue written for them in this game compared to the past entries. In New Leaf, I know people had their complaints, sure, but this is taking it to a whole new level. In literally any other entry, these guys felt actually alive, and the ones I spoke to the most felt like I was actually becoming better friends with them. Now it's just, oh, hello, Roll, yes, fitness, yes, oh, hiya, Bob, yes, that sentence totally doesn't swap around 2 words to make itself seem less repetitive. The villagers in this game are essentially just like watching an ant colony if nothing else. They've added the ability for them to do some more actions around the town, and that's essentially the forced extent of the interactions you're going to have with them. The problem extends to the special NPCs as well. How many times have you tried to hear Isabel talk about what TV was on last night or something whenever you booted up the game? And what's worse is that a lot of other interactivity was also cut for some strange reason, or at least made to appear far less frequently. That hide and seek minigame from past games? Not here at all. Doing tasks for your villagers? Yeah, good luck with that one. Villagers asking you about nice little topics like nicknames and your opinions on things? Maybe wait until the heat death of the universe and you might get asked about it at that point. The only reason villagers tend to ping me now is to teach me a new emotion, which, again, annoying that they've removed Shrunk in place of this, but still. You can't even pit for them anymore because item is so damn hard to get a hold of nowadays. I don't think you can even have them over at your house anymore or schedule time to meet at theirs, which isn't an improvement. Why is this not here besides the fact that something obviously went very, very wrong in development? Village is what some would argue to be the most iconic part of this franchise, and so to see them being reduced to nothing more than glorified statues really hurts. Now, I've talked about most of the aspects of this game separately. The only thing I've actually combined together are the first 2 weeks or so in that New Horizons segment before. But there's one major point in the review which I haven't mentioned, and that's how all the things I've mentioned actually come together to make what is arguably the main selling point of any Animal Crossing game. The things you do day to day on your island. Sure, I talked about the opening 2 weeks where you have a set task to do every day, but after that, what is there to do exactly? Well, let's get into it. Animal Crossing New Horizons is a life simulation game, if that isn't entirely obvious, but for the sake of comparison, Sims 4 is also the same genre, even though they have their differences. Now, whilst may not come into play later, I want to say that once I'm done with my main Sims 4 saves, and have pretty much done everything I wanted or needed to do, I can still keep playing and see what strange scenarios I can get myself into, even if there's no set goal in mind. And it's that which this part of the game really needs to achieve. First of all, the staples of Animal Crossing are all here: bug hunting, fossil hunting, fishing, and albeit I'm not a big fan of it, deep sea diving is here too. They all have varying improvements carrying over from previous games, and though at first fishing can be really hard to get used to, I'd say if you're not playing for money and you just want to chill out over time, this game hits the exact same notes as its predecessors. On top of this, you can also continue customizing your island past the required 3 stars to try and get 5 for the golden watering can, which can take a while, but hey, it keeps you playing. New flowers were also introduced in this game too, those being mums, windflowers and hyacinths. So setting up your garden and laying them out beside your paths has never been easier or more customizable. Villagers aren't as fun to talk to as they used to be. In fact, I'd say after a month you'll see most of the dialogue, which I really hope Nintendo fixes. But on the flip side, Nookmouse is an extreme stroke of genius on Nintendo's part, as completing the punch cards which they're giving to you is either a completionist or just someone who needs a few Nookmouse here and there. They encourage you to do things which you might not have previously seen yourself doing. Day-to-day life, while a step below what New Leaf was able to offer way back in 2013, is still really good. Of course, the daily burnout of this game can and will happen much faster than other games, but for a game where you might just hop on for 5 or so hours a week at most, it's nice. Does it work as a game which you could play frequently for a whole year? No, it fails on that front, and there's only so much you can do here without waiting for seasonal events. Day-to-day life is objectively more fun in every game before this. City folk had you visiting the city and speaking to a lot more interesting villagers. Then New Leaf came along and it had you being the mayor, working at the Roost, and just honestly working towards much more long-term goals. Play New Horizons for a shake-up every now and then, but in terms of it being the definitive Animal Crossing experience I was hoping for, it's just not there yet. So what would I rate Animal Crossing New Horizons? Well, the game, despite its many flaws and questionable approach to adding new content, if you're a fan of the past games, you'll easily enjoy a month or 4 of playing this game pretty much daily. After that, like I said, you'll see it as a long-term investment almost. You paid your $60, pounds, whatever currency you paid for it in, and I couldn't put it better myself, but as the Salt Factory so kindly put it on YouTube, the game is still very much in early access for full price. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy the game. If it looks appealing for you, go for it, you know? Give Nintendo the money they need to finish developing this game. But what I'm saying is that we need to let Nintendo know that what they're doing here isn't okay. Many people that don't want to wait until 2022 for the game to be finished via updates. Like every game before it, it should have been a complete package out of the box, with updates only serving to add events or brand new content, similar as to how New Leaf had its Welcome Amiibo update. In time, I think this might become the best Animal Crossing game we've ever seen. With all these new additions in the Knuckling camp, I have no doubt it will be, but as of right now it isn't. Seriously, if you want any examples to how underdeveloped this game truly is, look no further than this line from the opening moments of the reveal trailer. The Nook Inc. Deserted Island Getaway Package, and that says it all. For a game where I can assure you, you were meant to spend much more time feeling that deserted island life, with what I assume would have been a lot more characters and tents for even longer, but you spent about a week in that setting, and in truth, I think that in some ironic twist of fate, that first week on your brand new island where it's just you, a few villages you don't really know all that well, and Tom Nook and co, that is the best point in all of this game. Seriously, looking back at footage from that point in the game, it feels like an entirely different game than one we were supposed to be getting. And the fact that this game allows you to so easily abandon that deserted island aesthetic, despite that being such a major aspect of this game, is criminal. I think if they had a bit more time to hone their direction of what they wanted this game to be, they would have gotten a game where you could have had the island be deserted as developed as you wanted, but you could still somehow unlock all the features that came with developing the island right now. It's a shame, because the most fun I personally had is without a lot of these cool later game features. I genuinely want to ask any of you watching if you actually remembered recently that your island started off deserted. It's a weird predicament this game is in, because if there's any company I'd trust to make this all work out, you know, manage to keep the island feeling deserted but kind of up at the same time, it's Nintendo. Again, a lot more people have been introduced to Animal Crossing since New Leaf. So many more people, this is going to be their first one. And trust me when I say this series can be so much better. Anyway, once you're done with all the tasks the game has for you to do, the daily life on your island is nice with the odd events sprinkled in. It can be pretty enjoyable, but it still feels lacking at the same time. Of course, the game was rushed and it shows. I think they were under a lot of pressure to release the game, especially with Isabel's Smash announcement. It kind of felt like they were rushed to at least announce something to keep people tied over. And one delay was the best I think they could get away with on that front. Of course, COVID didn't help with the whole situation either, but I think looking back retroactively, and the popularity boost that New Leaf gave to the series 7 whole years ago, a lot of things were tied against the dev team, and I really do want to commend them for still making a pretty good game despite all the obstacles they had to face. They stitched everything together that was new and shiny and left the finer details for later to meet that March 20th release date. And because of that, and despite the fact I know this game will do better in the future, the current state of Animal Crossing New Horizons for the Nintendo Switch, here's my review and or breakdown for each major part of the game. Graphics, 9 out of 10. Audio, 8 out of 10. Online, 7 out of 10. Gameplay Part 1, Deserted Island Life, also known as Week 1, 9.5 out of 10. Developing the Island, also known as Weeks 2 and 3, 8.5 out of 10. And Week 4 onwards, also known as Day-to-Day Life, 7 out of 10. And updates are a 5 out of 10 as well. And when you tally all that up and account for parts which have a bit more weight than others, the final score for New Horizons, at least for me at this time, can be no more than 8 out of 10. It's a good, some would even argue great game for those first few weeks, and it really has a lot of potential, but right now I can't give it any higher than that. In fact, it's very similar to Shenmue in the sense that it really has those highs, but it's also dragged down by a few really bad flaws. Again, if this was a different game where it ended once you invited KK, it'd easily be a 9 out of 10, but a lack of post-game content in the base game, and the new content being somewhat infrequent and not introducing much to give you an incentive to keep playing, along with a multitude of other issues, that's what New Horizons gets, an 8 out of 10 at very best. It's quite the good early access game, but as for a premium full price experience, it falls short despite all of its improvements. Of course, with each update in the next year or so, the game will improve in quality, but that still doesn't invalidate the fact that it may very well take 2 full years to get there. You know, it seems with every review at this point, there's just an outro like this. You know, it started off way back when with the City Folk review, and we're here now 3 whole reviews later. I know that seems like a small number, but trust me, these reviews take a lot to put together, and this one was no different. It was just an absolute beast. You know, I'm pretty sure most of you can appreciate the work that's gone into this considering the timestamp, but seriously, being able to just sync up the video, and trust me, there was a lot of video. At one point the Vegas timeline was over 24 hours. Just syncing it up to have the right clips at the right time, and then having to search through all the footage to get those clips. Some were easy to find than others, trust me. And then just being able to sort music so it doesn't repeat, stuff like that, and just having to mix the levels. It was probably the hardest one I've had, because the way I got things was a lot like more destandardized. As it went along, the review just kind of changed, things were added, things were removed, I had to re-record things, and I am sorry if there were mistakes, but I'll get into that. But New Horizons really did deserve a review, because seriously, we were picking up steam, you know, at the end of February when I accidentally started daily uploading, but hey, now this counts as one. But seriously, when New Horizons hit and we had those 2 videos just absolutely take off, yeah, I can't thank this game enough. You know, for my gripes with it, it did get me over 300 or 400 subscribers, bring some notoriety to other series on the channel, and I'll forever be grateful for that, so I do want to do my best to pay it back. This was easily, though, the hardest game to tackle yet. I mean, City Folk kind of falls in the same vein, but I didn't really have an idea what I was doing way back when. It was just kind of a very light review. But, you know, as of the recent 3, you have Shenmue, which is very easy to break down into segments of what, you know, good and isn't good in different parts of the gameplay. Same type of thing with Sonic Unleashed. This game, it was kind of there, but there were other parts which just weren't there, and that was the hardest part. What do I make a section, and what do I make a footnote? And you'll notice the tangents I went off, like the part where I was talking about the reviews, that could have been its own section, but I chose to hide that in another section. Stuff like that was really like messing around, and along with all the other stuff, it was a nightmare. But you know, it's worth it. The support that the last 3 reviews have been getting recently is amazing. Shenmue's last, but that's to be expected considering its track history on this channel. I enjoy it though. But the Sonic Unleashed and City Folk reviews are both like over 200 and 500 views respectively. I recently got this one nice comment on the Sonic Unleashed one, and we just had a nice like discussion in the replies of that comment, talk about what we think the franchise is going to do next and whatnot. It was nice and heartwarming to see that like the effort I put into this was appreciated by, you know, some people. So seriously, thank you if you've made it this far. That's kind of why I put these in at the end. But with that, I really do hope you enjoy. I'm going to start the credits portion now. I could not do this by myself. I had to get stuff from a bunch of different sources. I did try and credit people with video footage on screen now, at least at that point in the review, but they're getting it again now. People that I got the OST from, shout out to you. And the people that helped me get the online footage for this, which was then turned into a relatively popular video for the channel, New Horizons but with fully fledged clowns. Huge shout out to Nate, Geo and Davin for helping me record that, as well as Alex and Jake. As I mentioned earlier, you really should go check out those guys' channels. They're making content which is like really hard to come by on YouTube, and it takes a massive time to produce. I know Jake's working on something, I think, so he might not have a video up by the time this one goes up. He's kind of been on and off unlisting and privating stuff, which is fair game, but Alex does have some content for you to go check out. He's so close to 10k, and I'm sure they'd really appreciate that little push that some of you guys might be able to go give them. But seriously, you should go check them out. And yeah, hopefully I can credit everyone I got PNGs and OSTs from. I could not do this one by myself, and I'll try and go back to the older reviews and credit people if I can remember where I got stuff from. But yeah, this review is far from perfect, I'll be honest. I know you may have noticed that on and off, every so often I accidentally miss out an NPC of like a point I was making, and I did try to correct that, but considering the time constraint I put myself on to get this out before Halloween in that fully fledged Clowns video, you know, it was kind of difficult to go back, re-record, especially when that would mean moving footage and having to redo a large portion of the review to fit it in. Like, the amount of cuts, every time you see a fade in this video between the video footage, that is a cut. And moving, like, I believe, the final count is about 400 of them. At least some high number if we're counting like every single cut in the Vegas timeline. It was difficult. We've got like 50 different text objects. The review would break if I tried to redo something. So yeah, please accept my apologies for maybe forgetting a few things and not being able to implement them besides a little note on the side. I am cutting it really close to the deadline. I did have to rework a few things so I could talk about the Halloween event before it's actually Halloween. I'm editing this on the 30th, and I had to use the trailer Nintendo put out for footage for that. It was, I'm cutting it close to the deadline, but I really hope it was worth it. And let me know what you think. Leave a like down below. Check out my little Let's Play series stuff on this channel. Maybe do the reviews. But yeah. I do wonder what's next for New Horizons, what's going to be added in November and whatnot, what in the end they're actually going to get and what isn't. And yeah, I know there'll be someone in the comments later, maybe in a month, maybe in a year, but they'll say, oh, you didn't mention this feature in the game that was added in such and such update. Guarantee one day there'll be someone like that, and I am prepared that because I've kind of criticised the game a decent amount in this video, that it might get a bit more backlash than others, so please help me defend against the people that are out for my throat after this one. As I mentioned before, there are very devoted people to this game, shall we say, and God forbid you criticise it, but hopefully, you're cool, and you can kind of appreciate, where the criticism's coming from. I've been following the series for so long, I hope it's there. And, yeah, I'm not sure what the next review's going to be. Depending on how I'm feeling, and if I can think of reviews that I'd be willing to do, there may be a straw poll in the description as well, along with Alex and Jake's channels, and links to everybody else's. This description's going to be crammed. My wrists are going to ache even more than they already do, because YouTube removed the copy tags feature the other day. And yeah, I'm thinking a Sonic game, not sure what, but I might just take a break. Back-to-back reviews on different months is absolutely exhausting. And yeah, one final thing I want to address. I may have touched on this briefly, but I am sorry for the speed and audio differences. As I said, when I was changing around things in the review, I did notice there were parts where I kind of mess up on a few words, or I go a little bit too fast or a little bit too slow, and I am really sorry about that. I am trying to get it to a speed where it's still fast but legible. It's been something I've worked on for a while, but again, with that, I hope you enjoyed. We should be passing the 1 hour mark around now, that's why I'm not stretching for time, but I just like to sit down at the end and just talk. But yeah, if you enjoyed, slap a like on it, vote on everything, check out the people in the description. This has been an absolute behemoth to do. I need to export this and get this out and scheduled for tomorrow at 2 PM so I can meet that deadline. And yeah, I really do hope you enjoyed. So, if you did, then be sure to leave a like, comment down below, maybe turn on notifications, and check out the other series as well. But with all that said, and all that aside, I really do hope you enjoyed this review. But thanks for watching, guys. My name's been Neremik, and peace out.